在这边。
Yeah.
好了。Okay. Thank you. Do you visit Japan often, or do you?
Often.
You do.
Yeah.
Whereabouts in Japan do you go?
Tokyo, Kyoto, Kokushima, Okinawa, many places. Because we are doing a documentary about Japanese history, about the Meiji Restoration.
Oh, you're doing a documentary?
Yeah. So I interviewed many people there.
Oh.
I also went to some very old hotel. I mean, the Taisho period and the late Meiji period. For a small house, they told me when the early 20th century, some Chinese students stay here.
Oh. So you have a very interesting job. Which university do you visit? Which university?
When you talk about your career, it seems very rational, something very practical. What's your irrational part?
My irrational part? My desk is a little bit of a mess. I'm not organized, and my old papers are a terrible mess. And my wife keeps telling me, clean up your mess. She's a very good wife for me because she's smart, she understands, but she treats me like an ordinary person. She doesn't treat me like a famous person.
What does the fame mean to you? I mean, 1979, especially that year, suddenly you become so famous in those
Actually, it turned out to be kind of fun because I was famous. I met all kinds of interesting people. But the first time I became famous, I was 49. It was too late to change.
You wish it happened in 29?
No. It's better it didn't happen because then I might be a different person. But I didn't. I don't think I acted like a famous person so much because all my life, my basic image, my friendship, everything had nothing to do with fame. I don't have any special talent. In Japan, I think one advantage is I lived a natural life. So I think when I talk to Japanese, they feel very comfortable because it's not a classroom Japanese. It's daily life. I learn from daily life. And to some extent, China is the same way. I try to talk in a way that people actually talk to each other. So it was not always the best classroom language, and maybe some mistakes, but it communicates and you're wrenching more. So I think my language, it helped my interest in intellectual life and ideas and curiosity. For example, I would be with a bunch of Japanese men in the evening at a bar. こういうこと考えるかなと。そういうことあるんかな。Could it be such a thing? And, oh yeah. It's kind of a questioning style. And in a way it's more modest. They watch, what the other person says and thinks very carefully so they don't make a mistake. Chinese are way more straightforward. 你应该听我的话吧，你应该听，你不要这样做了吧，那是太简单的事啊，你应该多考虑这些问题了，听我的。More of a power. I mean, it was kind of an interesting, at Harvard we have the young scholars, we would have a lunchroom. And somebody would say, oh yeah, well that's one way, here's another way of looking at it. He enjoyed intellectual playfulness of ideas. But I felt getting to know people and talking to them was much more important. That also made me a little more skeptical about documents. Because some historians, they look at documents and say, well, was it in the document? But I realized that even in writing a document, you don't get the whole story. The document does not tell everything. And sometimes the documents have some purpose. So that sometimes talking to people, maybe it's not as precise and not as accurate, but sometimes it can be deeper and you understand why the documents So I kept learning from talking to people a lot, yeah. So it was very important, yeah.
And in your book, you seldom show your scholarly side. I mean, very straightforward and focus on the facts and yeah. Why?
Well, I think that's to what I'm trying to do is not so important. I grew up in a small town. Most of my high school friends did not go to a college. Some went to college. When I was writing, I would try to think, what can those guys understand? And always try to have stories, because in the United States, people, they didn't care so much about other people's point of view. If you say, I don't particularly like bar, but if it's Americans at a bar, hey, what you think, man? Don't think of it that way, yeah. Let's think of it this way, yeah. Let's have another drink. That guy is crazy, man. He doesn't know what he's doing. Yeah.
You said before that you study other countries because you want to use others' experience to maybe enlighten United States.
Yes.
During the past 5 decades, you traveled deeply into China and Japan.
Yes.
So what's the major things you want to bring to United States, to Americans?
Well, unfortunately, they don't listen enough. If I really want to try to make America, if I really had power and really want to have fundamental, I think the experience of the countries that were late developers, where the country takes a more active role in trying to guide the whole country, would be really good. For example, we have good suburbs that have good schools. In poor neighborhoods, we have very poor schools, very poor teachers. If you had a national Ministry of Education, you would really try to have a national program, and you would have federal money, national money, to help the backward schools. So you'd have a much more equal educational system. So if I really had power and really want to use the example of Japan and China, I would say the government should take a much more active role. But I'm afraid America can't do that. I mean, we're not a late developer, and now people have too much pride. But in some ways, I think my vision is bigger. I mean, it's a very important intellectual task for the whole world. The grand vision, like Toynbee in the West had a big grand vision, and maybe some earlier period had a grander vision. But I think now people are not looking forward enough. For example, the bureaucrats I knew in the 1950s, that generation who were thinking how you build a modern Japan were really very broad. And the bureaucrats now are much pettier. They've become too small. I think that there are historical changes in different time periods. Whether you have a broad vision makes a big difference. For example, humiliation could be used in different ways. It could be used as a stimulus to study and to learn more, to build a modern organization. The Meiji is, as I say, it's a modernization program and an integrated program, and succeeded, but then they had years of disaster. In the 1930s, they had taught patriotism so successfully that the leaders could not control it. And the defeat by the United States was so devastating, and they suffered so much. And then they had to revise, and now they have to accept a new role in the world. I mean, in a way, it's not so glorious. Japan must accept China as number one in Asia, and America is a much greater, bigger country. They can be a modern country, but it's not so exciting. How to adjust to this new world? They don't have a clear vision. I think in China also, China is new powerful, and they have not yet become comfortable with their power. Now when they go to many other countries, some of the instinct is, look, we're the big shot, please listen to us. There are some people like that. And some other people say now to get along as we expand, we cannot be too proud. That is a good way. But my impression is that they use a lot of slogans, but they haven't tried to be systematic. They did not have an overall systematic plan about learning from the world in every single area. Geography, local customs, the value system, the religion, the family structure, how to persuade and how to have deep understanding of people, their deeper feelings. For example, in the United States, propaganda is not a good way to persuade Americans. In the long run, this will not succeed very well. So they do not have yet the mature vision about how to adapt to the rest of the world as they grow. From America's point of view, I think after World War II, in a way, it was kind of a peak. We were the one great country in the world with modern industry. And now China will surpass America in some places. And we don't have a plan. I think our leaders, they have an instinctive reaction from the Cold War. We won't let another country pass. And a lot of people in Washington just want to criticize China, jump on China. But they don't have a vision of how to work with China now. I mean, from my point of view, human civilization is not just about business interests, economic growth, or new technology breakthrough. It's a broader conception. It's a kind of an intellectual development of trying to think the big picture of what is happening.
You mentioned the public intellectual tradition. In 1960s, 70s, and until 80s, public intellectual play a very important role in understanding other countries. Now it become more marginal. There is a deeper problem. I mean, comparing with the older generation, people think not curious about different behavior, mentality of others, civilization. We are very self-centered. From your perspective, how to deal with?
I don't know the answer. I wish I knew. I think it has to do with the new connection between communication and so forth. But what will be the basis of healthy relations? It's true. I mean, in the last 20 years, the world became chaotic. And out of the chaos, people went off in different directions, so I don't know that answer. But I think what I can do, and maybe have some impact, I hope, is how to deal with China. And there's some things Americans may not like about what's going on in China. But you have to be realistic. After all, China is going to be strong. And there are a lot of good Chinese people you can work with.
If Zhongking Fairbank alive, what would he do?
In a way, he did not have such a broad goal as I do. He wanted to have better relations with China, but his vision was more in terms of the field of Chinese studies. I would say one of the fundamental differences with Fairbank and me is he was elitist. He was higher class than I, and more. He went to Oxford and Rhodes Scholar and so forth. And I was more or 普通人. You know, my father was a small Jewish merchant, and I worked in the store. And my father had very good attitude of trying to get along with everybody and to become very familiar and very friendly. It was a town of about 10,000, and the small college, Ohio Wesleyan, which is a Methodist town, maybe partly because it was a religious town. There were many Christians there, although I was Jewish. It gave me a sense that I want to be friends with everyone. And also it was World War II. So we had friends who went to the war. We knew people who died during the war. My generation after the war, we really wanted to have world peace. And in some ways, I feel I'm so lucky. I grew up in such a small town in America. I was given the opportunity to experience so many historical changes. And that to me means so much responsibility. Not because I thought that was so important, but because thought their relationship was so bad, and I really want to make. I mean, that's the honest way. I really want those people to get along because there's so many good people in both countries, and there ought to be a better way. And I knew a lot of people. I want them to get along. So maybe I'm immodest. Maybe I'm not correct, but I think I have a contribution to make.
So, do you think? I mean, there was a golden age between China and the United States, but now we have so many different complexes between each other. So I mean, the transition, how the transition happened is,
of course, every country like China and the United States is big, and we have many different people. The extreme rightists, the extreme leftists. They don't have the confidence and the vision to really develop a understanding of each other. So how to find a new path. I'm afraid it could be so hard in the near future. But, well, it's also, I think of the missionaries. I'll give you one example. I knew Guangdong a guy named Yang Mai.
本节目由信雷克萨斯 LS 冠名播出。本节目由腾讯会议行业赞助播出。
Oh, how? Well, he remembers it differently, but what I remember is we were still dating, and we had spent a weekend away, and we're driving back from this weekend, and he said out of the blue, "I'm going to marry you," and I said, "Aren't you even going to ask me?" And he had just assumed that I would marry him. So he turned out to be right, but I thought that this is a strange proposal to be told. That
Very straightforward, romantic.
Yeah. He's a very positive person. That's not to say he doesn't have a grasp of reality. He does, but he's very positive. He's basically optimistic. The typical picture of him is of a person smiling. In fact, I didn't realize it at the time, but one time I was supposed to meet him in his office, and I was approaching the office, and I saw him running down the street towards his office from another office, and I thought, oh my gosh, he's so eager to see me. He's running to see me. And then he gave me his dazzling smile, and I realized that's what he does for everybody. It's not that I'm special.
你要咖啡吗？咖啡。
咖啡
Do you have
OK
decaf? I have
we
this.
have 普洱茶。
俾翻條聲我，俾翻條聲我。
Okay. 这么多人呐！
1979年に出版し、日本でベストセラーとなったジャパンアズナンバーワンの著者で、ハーバード大学名誉教授のエズラ・ボーゲルさんが20日、アメリカ・マサチューセッツ州の病院で亡くなりました。エズラ・ボーゲルさんはアメリカでも有数の日本通として知られていて、
我再又重新读你那个邓小平，第一个 chapter 又是讲的麦理浩去见他，对，我其实15年前电话 interview 过您。
哦，是吗？
对，也是讲。
你的记性恐怕比我好。
哎呦，没有您才好。
你还在北京啊？
我还在北京。对，我很多年前就读您的书。
哦，是吗？
非常。
谢谢。
关键我觉得您这个整个的人生历程特别的 amazing 啊，我觉得。
我运气很好。那个邓小平的女娃我认识的，还有那个前年你的秘书也认识的，还有那个来哈佛的那个中国留学生啊，中国的学生也帮助我的情况，所以我认为我的运气好，所以那个能利用的人呢都利用过，十分利用的。
中国驻美国大使崔天凯发文表示，傅高义是杰出的中国问题学者，也是中国人民的老朋友，曾2度担任哈佛大学费正清中心主任。他的《邓小平时代》一书被视为向西方客观介绍改革开放以来当代中国的重要著作。
您身上这个 energy 很惊人呐，我觉得怎么能保持这么多年呢？
我认为啊，跟那个年轻人呢，跟能干的人接触啊，是给我一些那个 energy 啊。当然是我要那个休息，现在89岁啊，所以那个休息一些。做完这个可能是要休息几分钟啊，这工作几分钟，休息几分钟。
但是我看您那个 schedule， 我就
太紧张了
，shocked，totally shocked。
那个老人家怎么做啊？
对我们，他们都20多岁，都觉得自己不可能做这件事情。
Ezra Vogel is one of America's leading scholars of East Asia, the product of a passionate conviction about seducing Americans into curiosity about China.
请
在那边吗？
对，您看坐那边舒服。
你说是？
您坐这边就好了。
这边就行了。啊，这个风景很不错的一个地方呢。
对，
好了。
你说您个人对于外界的这种好奇心，就 curiosity， 到底是怎么来的呢？
我认为是这样的，要是了解自己社会，应该了解外国的社会。要不然的话，你自己的社会的特点什么的，你不会了解了。那么我个人研究的方法，交朋友，是了解人，是人的思想，是跟那个人的历程啊，多了解，变成朋友，是朋友能告诉你比较那个真实。那么后来呀，我认为我的责任是不一样，对。
我记得2年前的冬天，我在香港第一次见到傅先生，他的能量让我大吃一惊。我们的见面被安排在他一连串的演讲与座谈的间歇，那是一次愉快的见面。我们边吃着叉烧，边谈论着对历史与世界的看法。那也是一次未完成的采访。我们相约在哈佛再见。疫情中断了一切，傅先生的意外离去使拜访不再可能。尽管如此，我仍想把这次未完成、带着明显遗憾的访问呈现出来。在这新的时代情绪中，傅先生所代表的一切，不仅是他的思想与见解，更是他的耐心与温暖，他广泛的好奇心，理解他人的热忱，以及永不疲倦的坚持，都显得尤为珍贵。他不断提醒我们，开放与对话之重要，而我们的文明，不正是一场无尽的对话吗？当我看到世界变得越来越封闭的时候，变得突然的充满了防卫心，我们是孤独的狂欢呐。所以创造亲密是非常非常重要的一件事情，就身体上那种亲密感，包括知识上的亲密感，对一个社会的运转是多么重要的一件事。我们第5期都是这个。
兼容之道，才能构筑意义之网。大胆想象，在任何时刻，你都可以随时起舞。
The exchange with people whose experiences are different from one's own is very illuminating. There are other ways to think. And I think that right now, that kind of attitude in this country is so necessary. Right now in the US, we are so divided that we cannot come to the middle. I mean, Ezra wrote China and Japan Facing History. Somebody needs to write the book now. America, right and left, facing history. Maybe I'll write that. No. But no, it's people are so close-minded. And the sad thing is, it's not just the other side, it's one's own side. You know, we're not willing to even talk. When Trump won the election, I was surprised. But I immediately looked for all the books that I could find that related to what the other side might be thinking or experiencing, and that might contribute to my understanding of why this was happening.
Yeah.
And I spoke to a good friend. Oh, you know, I'm reading this and that and the other thing and trying to understand the other side. And she just looked at me and said, why would you want to understand the other side? They're all racists. End of story. And this is an intelligent person whose opinion I normally respect. And she's still my very good friend. But why would I even try to understand another side? Surprised her. People are just absolutely closed. We don't need that. We don't need that in the same country. We certainly do not need that between China and the US. People need to understand why there are different points of view and how can you find a middle ground. I mean, we both sincerely wish people could listen to other people and respect their opinions, or at least understand them.
So you discuss the issue with Ezra a lot? Often?
Well, I wouldn't say a lot. I mean, you know, we're sitting there at the kitchen table. I'm reading the Boston Globe. He's reading the New York Times. Now I have to read the New York Times myself. And I'll say, oh, did you see this story on blah, blah, blah? Or Trump is doing X, Y, Z. Yeah, I mean, we would discuss them like that. Or something terrible. I mean, I am so glad, it's just going to sound stupid. I'm so glad he didn't see January 6th. It would have broken his heart.
You said you try to be kind to everybody, to make friends.
Yeah.
Is a problem maybe sometimes you'll be less critical to the subject, to the...
Sometimes I may not, I may underestimate their evil intent. It's possible. Just bad people. Even bad people, I try to understand, you know, why they want to do those things. Are they really so completely bad? Maybe I don't describe the evil as much as I should.
You prefer the better angel.
Well, my approach is to try to understand why people do what they do. So I can sympathize with a broad range of people who have different ideas. Well, okay, towards Trump, it's hard to be sympathetic toward Trump.